This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Well, imagine signing a deal to lease your land to an energy company only to be told, the checks aren't coming, right? That's the reality facing a consortium of landowners in Alberta's capital city of Edmonton, where tensions are boiling over with a company called MAGA Energy. If you checked out our most recent episode with W. Brett Wilson, you would have heard me mention this story. And we're hearing stories subsequent to that of missed payments, broken trust, and now barricaded roadways, landowners taking matters into their own hands, denying access to wells and other infrastructure on their own property. It's a dramatic escalation, and it raises big questions. What recourse do landowners actually have? This is a story we've been discussing for months, if not years. Hundreds of millions of dollars in back taxes owed to municipalities, rural municipalities in particular, and that's just one angle on the story. So today we'll endeavor to find how common is this? What led to this escalation? And what happens when the energy business runs into a cash flow crunch? This isn't just a contract dispute. This is a power struggle over property rights, accountability, and the rules of the game in Alberta's oil patch. Mark Dorin, a good friend of this show and co-founder of the Polluter Pay Federation, will be joining me live in the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse right here in downtown Edmonton in 30 seconds. Right after we remind you that this episode is happening with the support, the presenting sponsorship of RapidX Financial. You can find them online at rapidxfinancial.com. I don't have to tell you that the crypto world moves fast, and your trust in an exchange simply cannot be a gamble. And that's why Real Talk is proud to partner with RapidX Financial, a made-in-Alberta solution backed by the same experts behind those rapid cash ATMs you've been seeing across Canada for 25 plus years. RapidX makes it easy to get started with 3 different ways to trade. You can, of course, check out their online forum, that secure platform at rapidxfinancial.com. They have those physical crypto ATMs that I mentioned and an over-the-counter desk for discrete, larger value trades, or if you're like me, if you'd like a human to help guide you through what could be a significant investment. A discrete, larger value trade sometimes needs that over-the-counter service. And for Real Talkers in particular, there's a special offer because you're hearing about this on the show. When you go to rapidxfinancial.com, use the promo code Ryan50, that's Ryan50, all one word, to take 50% off fees on all of your online Interac e-transfer trades. RapidX is secure, it's FinTrack registered, which is a huge deal, and critically, it's non-custodial. I love Doc Taylor walks up to me in a pub yesterday celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Good friend of the show. He said, hey, tell me more about RapidX and the non-custodial element. The guy is scaling up his learning on this. I love to see it. You'll always control your keys, Doc, and that's a big deal. That's promo code Ryan50 when you visit rapidxfinancial.com. Well, what a pleasure to welcome back to the Real Talk studio, longtime friend of the show, co-founder of the Polluter Pay Federation and one of Alberta's more prominent land rights advocates, Mark Dorin. It's nice to see you in studio. Thanks for making the trip.
Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you were. I'm gonna give a little peek behind the curtain for the audience. I received emails from you at 3:45 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. I said, were you up late or were you up early? You said both. You had plans already today before you agreed to join us here in studio. Where were you off to?
I was headed from Red Deer up to Redwater to go to a land client's land. We've got some trespass issues going on out there. The oil company just decided to plow a road right across the middle of the landowner's field and bring their service rig in off the lease road. So this is trespass. There's actually big fines and jail terms now for trespass on landowner's land, but we can't get any police to lay those charges. So I'm going to be trying to solve that little problem today.
Okay, I want to get something out of the way in the first minute of our conversation. For people that maybe listen to the first podcast of Real Talk ever in their lives, because W. Brett Wilson was on, and now we're talking about this as a follow-up to that conversation. They're going to go, here's a left-wing nut job that wants to do everything he can to shut down Alberta's oil and gas sector. Talk to me about your career. Talk to me about your employment history, what you've been involved in over the past number of decades.
Right. Well, I started working in oil and gas as a teenager, really, and then I actually was a field foreman in the Redwater field for quite a few years, where I'm headed today. That's the Alberta's premier oil field, the richest oil field we've ever had. And then I was a consultant for years. I went overseas in the early mid-1980s, worked in Libya, and then after that I started my own oil field export business, and I ran that for over 30 years.
So you're an oil and gas guy.
I'm an oil and gas guy. I switched to doing land stuff because of family problems, a very highly unsafe and illegal oil and gas well on family urban lands. And then I started reaching out and finding other urban landowners, and that's what brought me to this Edmonton land that we had a press conference about last week. So pretty business type person, far from what you would call a left-wing nut job.
Okay, well, and I mean no offense to left-wing nut jobs.
Nope.
I'm just trying to say I think it's important that this audience understands what's driving your advocacy, what's motivating the work that you're doing in collaboration with a lot of other groups, and we can direct people to a couple of different involvements you have. Number one, because folks will want to follow along, they can check out cleanupyourmess.ca. Cleanupyourmess.ca. You've been lobbying, you've been pressuring oil companies, the energy regulator, the Alberta government for quite some time now to do landowners right. On a previous appearance on this show, I remember after listening to you speak, I deduced seems like Albertans, everyday Albertans, are getting screwed right now by Alberta's biggest industry.
Well, in terms of the insolvency of the conventional oil and gas industry, there's no question about it, and that comes in several forms that I think citizens just aren't aware of. The main one is that when we have these orphan wells, like you talked about yesterday with Mr. Wilson, once those wells get declared orphans, the taxpayer pays the landowner for decades until that well site is retired, cleaned up, and there's a reclamation certificate issued. And last year's they paid $30 million out to landowners by the government of Alberta, and this year's already up to $40 million. Over 8,000 applications, and we know that only a third of landowners are actually applying to get compensated. So we're compensating as taxpayers landowners for deadbeat oil companies. That's what's going on in Alberta.
And it's flying under the radar, I think, of the average Albertan, maybe less so if you're involved in politics, in particular in rural municipalities. A pretty striking news story. It's flying below the main headlines right now, I think, because everything that's going on in Iran and everything that's going on with the United States. But the Alberta government has just delivered a pretty tough pill to swallow for rural municipalities in particular that have been waiting on hundreds of millions of dollars in back taxes.
Yeah, they're going to have to eat that, and they're going to have to eat a lot more, because there's a huge number of oil companies that are not being declared, they've not gone into bankruptcy, or their wells haven't been declared orphans yet. But there's literally hundreds of oil companies that have no money whatsoever, no employees whatsoever, no offices whatsoever. They're just holding all this back and trying to keep it out of the orphan well program. But it's a deluge of bankruptcy coming down the pipe. This is going to get much worse.
I wonder if a lot of folks, or a considerable number of people, might be surprised to hear that the land that we're talking about in particular with this story, MAGA Energy is the company that I referenced yesterday, and that's who we're talking about in this specific instance. We're talking about land right in the Metro Edmonton region. We're talking about land in the capital city. This isn't somewhere in some remote rural area. You think the average Albertan, the average Canadian would be aware of what's happening in the urban centers and the industry that happens there?
I think they need to be aware of it. This particular oil field is called Armacy Oil Field. It was discovered in 1951. It's right by Cameron Heights in Windermere on the riverbank in Edmonton. It's right in one of the most high-end residential areas.
Sure.
The wells go underneath Windermere. We're damaged because we're producing oil from underneath all those houses on the riverbank, etc. So this is an old oil field. It's been lots of problems. It's a sour gas field. There's been they've been flaring illegally there for years. When they flare, there's fugitive sour gas emissions that quite often envelope the freeway. I can't tell you how many times I've had them shut down. And they just say, you bad boys and girls, don't ever do this again.
Who says that? The Alberta Energy Regulator?
That's our ineffective, completely, totally ineffective Alberta Energy Regulator. I think they know They know the illegality that's been going on in this field, in this city for so long, they're afraid to do anything. They're afraid to admit it. They're embarrassed about it.
So how does it get to the point where landowners are blocking entryways and literally locking out an oil company that holds a lease to their land?
Mm-hmm. Well, here, these issues with this oil field have been going on for so long, and they're so complicated that the powers that be, they can't understand it. So we have a surface lease contract that's supposedly operating the relationship between landowner and this oil company, and it has a default clause in it. So they didn't pay their annual compensation 3 years in a row. So I triggered the default clause. So that default clause says, if we give them notice and they don't pay up within 30 days, we can re-enter upon the land, and the tenancy created by that lease agreement shall terminate. So that's what I did. I gave proper notice. And it's important to note, Ryan, that you can't by law bar oil companies off the land for certain activities. So you can bar them off for operational purposes. So we put some barricades up. There's a sign on that barricade that says, you are barred for entry for operational reasons, but not for the safety reasons or shutdown reasons, etc. And they are trespassing now. And I did formally ask the AR to shut them down for two reasons. They're illegal flaring on our land, and because now when the surface lease terminates under section 3.012A of the Oil and Gas Conservation Rules, the licensee of the well or facility, and we have both here, must abandon that well or facility. That means plug the wells. So Mega has 3 wells. They must plug them now by law. And the facility is licensed by a different company called Tidewater Midstream and Infrastructure. So they must decommission that facility. So we've simply asked the regulator to force them to do what they're mandatorily required by law to do. And it's been well over a week. And it's actually March 5th, I filed a formal application with the AR, and they've not even acknowledged that application yet, let alone acted.
Does the AER see you as a pain in the ass? I mean, you're in regular contact with the regulator.
They've been managing me specifically because of this field since 2016. Okay. They have a person that's actually in charge of managing me.
And how would you describe the regulator's response, generally speaking, and in this specific instance?
Well, I only contact the regulator for very serious matters. I don't ever contact them for trivial matters. But I filed a lot of properly filed formal applications that meet their rules over the years for more than 10 years now, and they've all ended up in file 13. None of them have been acknowledged. This regulator is not a regulator, period.
Do you think that your advocacy, or do you think that the pressure that you've been putting on the regulator is it unique? Is it something that the regulator's not used to? Have landowners typically in past? And I don't invoke this phrase lightly. I'm not trying to be cute. I'm not trying to victim blame here. But have landowners, generally speaking, just kind of taken it? They've just looked at the non-payment and kind of shrugged their shoulders, or been frustrated, or maybe not had an outlet or an avenue, maybe not had a clear understanding of what their options are. Like, is what you're doing new or unusual? It strikes me that it is.
I wouldn't say it's all that new or unusual. First, I've got to clarify that the regulator doesn't have jurisdiction over payment matters. That's a different body called the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. So if you even mention the word payment, they will refuse jurisdiction, even when they might possess that jurisdiction. But what we go to the regulator for are public safety matters, that sort of thing. I've got clients that have serious gas venting right in their yards as farmers, serious matters, or wells that are supposed to be plugged out in the middle of their field that are spewing gas that they could drive over with their tractor and blow themselves sky high. We cannot get this regulator to act. And in fact, I took one. I run the Warburg Surface Rights Group. One of your AB Rancher said yesterday, you mentioned him. He goes there a lot. So I organize the speakers there, and I'm part of that group. And last year we had David Yeager, who's on the board of the Alberta Energy Regulator now, out there with Vitor Marciano. And I took this one client out there that's terribly impacted by this gas venting. And I said to him, I introduced her to him. And I said, she's got these 3 venting wells on her land. He said, send me the UIWs tomorrow. That means unique well identifiers. And I did, and I've never heard back from them. They don't do anything.
The name David Yeager will resonate with people as an oil industry advisor, right, that was appointed by Alberta's premier. There was an ethics complaint, was it last year, I think, in 2025, where he regarding his role developing that mature asset strategy, right, for the Alberta government, correct?
Yeah, my colleague.
And the strategy had recommended using, this was the R-Star program or
No,
separate?
no.
Can you help us get us up to speed on all of this? And,
Sure.
And the key players so we can have a really clear understanding of who we're talking about?
Yeah, so they started something called Mature Asset Strategy, and they started what they called 6 tables. These were groups of on different topics to consult with. And they said that they invited landowners, but they really didn't. Landowners sort of forced their way in, but they only invited 2 or 3 landowners, and I know all of them. So there was really no consultation, and they came up with this, what's called a mature asset strategy, and there's 21 recommendations, and they're wide-ranging, but it's essentially industry, especially the dry gas industry, was complaining that they're insolvent. They're not making any money, and they blamed it on 2 things, landowner payments and municipal taxes. So the large part of this strategy is to try to get these companies back profitable again. And that involves things like trying to play with the natural gas market, starting AI centers where you can burn gas for power, etc. They have lots of plans to do that. There's lots of things about enhanced oil recovery and other things that I personally think these companies are free to do. Nobody's stopping them. But there is some stuff that's like R-Star on steroids, where we're going to instead of giving wells to the Orphan Well Association and have industry pay to close them, they're now going to put them into something called a Harvest Co. And that Harvest Co. won't pay royalties. We'll give them free oil, and they'll try to make enough money to pay for the closure of that well so that industry doesn't have to pay for the closure of the well like they agreed to do many years ago. So, and then they also want to relax the closure regulations. They want to allow wells that are blowing gas through the casing to continue to do so forever because it's too expensive to fix it. They don't want to clean up saltwater spills on people's land because it's too expensive. And they argue that if we can just fix the easy stuff, we can fix more sites. We'll just leave all the hard, expensive sites. So that's what's going on. It's called Mature Asset Strategy. It should be called, unprofitable well strategy, because they're not assets, they're liabilities. But and so Mr. Yeager was the author of that report. And my friend Dwight Popowich, my colleague, he's the chair of the Polluter Pay Federation. He's the one that filed the ethics complaint against Mr. Yeager.
Got it. Mark Dorin, co-founder of Polluter Pay Federation, joining us in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I love this from Ms. KD in our live chat powered by Park Power. She raises her hand. She says, left-wing nut job over here. She's just checking in. I love that. Love a sense of humor, Ms. KD. But she says, stupid question. Are orphan wells the same thing as inactive wells? Can you help the folks maybe working outside the oil industry to understand exactly what we're talking about here?
Sure. And you know what? This is probably confusing orphan wells with the term abandoned wells is probably the most common thing. The media always uses the term abandoned improperly. So in regulatory terms and in industry terms, an abandoned well is a plugged well. It's plugged according to something called Directive 020. That's a set of rules, and it means plugged and cut off below surface so that you don't see the surface anymore. We got about 500 of those in the city of Edmonton.
That's done right?
That's supposed to be permanent, but we don't know how to close wells permanently yet.
Okay.
They are going to leak in the future. All of them, for sure. So an inactive well is a well that's not producing. An orphan well, there's no real definition, but what it really means is a well that doesn't have a responsible party that holds the license that's responsible for it. So the AER designates wells as orphans, and once they're designated as orphans, they're taken over by something called the Orphan Well Association, and it gets its funds to close these wells and clean up the sites from something called the Orphan Well Fund. And that's a legislated fund, and it's the envy of the world. It's the best system in the world. It's a citizen taxpayer safety net, which we're mismanaging. So years ago, the industry said they wanted to regulate this industry and say, look, we'll make you put up security deposits, or we're going to regulate who you can transfer your well license to. And industry said, no, don't do that. It'll hurt our investment. This was around in the 90s. And so in the year 2000, they codified this. It's called the orphan fund. So once a year, the regulator has a task to say, here's the levy on industry. You have to pay this amount of money into the orphan fund. It's supposed to be done according to 3 legislated factors. Those factors are ignored, and the fund is about 1/10 of what it ought to be. So industry's supposed to pay to clean up these wells in a reasonable period of time, but it's taking decades. And meanwhile, we're paying the landowners. Landowners are paying themselves through their tax dollars. So that's what the difference between an orphan well and an active well is, that orphan well simply doesn't have an owner.
By the way, Super Chat Ken kicking in $5, buying you a cold beer. He says, Mark Dorin. That's the Super Chat. I guess just a tip of the cap to you, Mark. You can grab a cold one on your way out. I should note for the podcast listeners, you are wearing your literal emissions cap today. Just says emissions right off the top. I think I've seen the same one on Max Fawcett's bookshelf. Where do people get their emissions cap?
Yeah, that you get them by going to... I don't know who handed them out, but some environmental group. But for me, it means something a little bit different. And emissions have a personal history for me. And that's what happened on my parents' land. Extreme gas venting that used to cause my mother to be asphyxiated in her garden. And she now has Parkinson's, and it's happening. We have the worst natural gas air quality in the world, in the greater Red Deer, including Edmonton area, and in the Lloydminster area. People have all kinds of diseases caused by our we are venting massive volumes of gas in the province of Alberta, and it's all been illegal since 1972. It's something we have to get a handle on. And I'm not talking climate change. I'm talking human health.
How do people know if that's happening in their neck of the woods? Is it something you can smell? Is it something you can sense? Is it this invisible influence?
If natural gas has a component we call H2S, hydrogen sulfide, in it, you will be able to smell it in low concentrations. So it's a bit of a marker. So those leaks usually get found and stopped. But hydrocarbon gases like methane or propane or butane, they're colorless, tasteless, and odorless, and you don't know you're breathing them. You have no idea.
Did your mom receive a medical opinion that led you to believe that the Parkinson's is a result, or at least that this was a factor in the onset of that disease?
Yep. Definitely, from a neurologist.
That should be bigger news, probably.
Should be the biggest news in the province, in my opinion. That's why I wear the missions hat.
In our live chat, got an interesting comment here from, obviously a lot of people have opinions on this, and we'll get to as many as we can. Kathy says, so we're giving oil companies subsidies and then we're cleaning up after them. Any other industry, this would absolutely never fly, in particular in passing this by taxpayers. Not all bad players, right? I'm not trying to be the not all oil companies guy, but I want to be clear here. Are there good operators? Are there people that have operated proudly and with integrity and that their employees should be proud to work for these companies? Or is this like a rot through the industry? What have you seen over your decades?
Well, when I was a young man working in Redwater for a very responsible oil company, we had good oil companies. They were responsible. I could shut things down without any problem from head office. We're supposed to. Safety was first. Don't incur liabilities. But now most of the good stuff has been found and produced. The easy, cheap stuff is found and produced for sure. We've drilled 450,000 holes in the ground, and only 150,000 of them are producing or marginal now. 300,000 of them are still mostly left to be dealt with, plugged, or the land's cleaned up. It's too expensive to clean them up, so they just continue to pay landowners. Now they're not paying landowners. So, we're just kicking this can down the road, and it's starting to get acute. But I say now it's just degrees of bad. And some of the bigger companies, they may pay landowners still, but I go to well sites all the time. 9 out of 10 are regulatory non-compliant.
Dwayne in our chat says Ralph Klein didn't make oil companies clean up their messes, and now Albertans have a mammoth bill of, Dwayne says $260 billion to deal with this. Did it start with Klein? Was it before Klein? Have there been premiers that got serious on it?
No.
Brett Wilson, I'll play a clip from our interview in just a bit. If you missed that, it was the 17th of March. We talked to W. Brett Wilson. I recommend you check it out. It was one of the more lively interviews we've had on the show. And we talk about coal mining, we talk about orphan wells, we talk about his take on Alberta separation. But I've heard people suggest he invoked Rachel Notley. He said, listen, this was an issue under Rachel Notley as well. I've also heard people say that $260 billion is maybe just, the first spoonful, that these liabilities, or in particular the taxes owing, let alone the cleanup, is much larger than that. What's your informed take?
Okay, well, nobody can estimate these liabilities accurately because one site's going to cost $100,000 to clean up, and the other one's going to cost $10 million, depending on if there's been spills or if if there's a leaks up around the wellbore, etc. But I think that it's for the upstream conventional oil and gas. Half of that is a reasonable estimate. Quite a few years ago now, we did do something at ALDP in 2019 or so, where we estimated just for wells alone between 30 and 70 billion, and the AR's internal estimate was 66 billion. That's just for wells. That doesn't include facilities or pipelines. So the rest of it, the other half, is oil sands. So we have and it's a totally different regime for oil sands as it is for wells. For example, they don't have an orphan well type fund for oil sands. They're supposed to put up security, but they're not. They're saying, hey, we got all the security. It's the oil that we effectively own in the ground because it's leased from the state, right? So if the price of oil collapsed tomorrow and stayed that way, we'd go broke in this province. We would not recover from this liability.
Well, so you'd be screwed upon screwed. Obviously, the budgetary implications would be very significant.
Yep.
I think a reasonable person would suggest that's not going to happen.
Probably not.
Right?
Not right away, no.
Not right away. But bigger picture, obviously a real issue. We're hanging out with Mark Dorin. Dubious in our chat says, did he say the company is called MAGA Energy? That's right, Dubious. It's magaenergy.ca. I'm showing you the website right now. We've been talking about this company for quite some time, based on really excellent reporting from a number of different journalists across the country. If you just Google MAGA Energy, you can certainly read more about this. Ms. B in our chat says, I'm sure glad to see people like Mark insisting on accountability. I want to drill into this deeper. No pun intended, actually, believe it or not. Can you hang out with us for a few more minutes?
You betcha. And
Okay.
it's Make Alberta Great Again, according to them and according to journalists which have asked them that question, just so to be clear. Yeah.
Well, I can think of some ways to make Alberta great. One of them would be to compensate landowners. Number two would be to clean up our messes, hold corporations accountable. Again, you can check out cleanupyourmess.ca if you want to learn more about what Mark's talking about. And we'll get into this in more fulsome fashion in a moment. The Coalition for Responsible Energy at responsibleenergyab.ca. We'll link to both of these in the show notes. If you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you, first of all. If you're watching this on YouTube as well, remember the show notes are always a great resource for links, further information on our guests, and of course, maybe some details on some of the incentives that we're proud to support as well. And that includes the 2026 Alzheimer's Pro-Am Hockey Tournament. Friends, I'm going to be playing in this again next month, in the month of April. I'll be lacing up my skates in honor of my grandma, Norma. She, of course, lived with dementia for a number of years. When I say, of course, I get all I'm referencing is the fact that so many families are impacted by Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. And if you know, you know. It's a tough one, and so I will skate proudly alongside my Cali Crush teammates, our team presented by California Closets, and we'll be raising money for this. Last year, 1.2 million-ish, 1.1 and change, and we're going to look to build on that. And so I'm dangling a bit of a carrot, friends. If you go to any of my social media, you follow me on X or Facebook, I have it on LinkedIn, I have it on Blue Sky. If you're able to, consider a donation to my player profile. If you do it by Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, a minimum $100 donation will automatically enter you to win 2 club seats. We're not putting you up near the rafters. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But 2 club seats to see the Oilers host the Tampa Bay Lightning this Saturday, the 21st of March. Those tickets, by the way, courtesy of our friends at Play Alberta. We're going to be doing the draw Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. A minimum $100 donation to my player profile will enter you in that draw. I want to give a shout out to everybody that's donated thus far. I see my cousin Jorgen in there. Jorgen's making a donation in honor of our Auntie Gail. Says not Alzheimer's per se, but early onset dementia is no joke. Boy, is he ever right about that. Thanks to everybody in advance for considering a donation, and those of you that are able to. You'll find a link to donate in the show notes. We'll also pop that into our live chat for our live tuning audience today. If you're looking to go green as a family, as a business, maybe as an ag operator, I want to recommend Kuby Renewable Energy at kuby.ca. Kuby.ca is where you can get a free quote for solar from Western Canada's busiest installer with innovative solar solutions for every home and business. Listen, if they can make the Edmonton Convention Center look as good as they did, what an install that is. Imagine what they can do on your roof, whether that's your house, your barn, your office tower. Kuby does it all. You're going to want to be top of the list for their spring installation schedule. So request that quote today at kuby.ca. Our friends at Friesen Brothers, always with something going on. I don't have to tell you that. For more than 70 years, this family-owned business has been raising the bar when it comes to feeding Alberta families, and that includes their classic Easter dinner box. This is what we get every single year. I mean, you hear me talk about it. You know that we do this for Thanksgiving. You know we do this for Christmas as well. You can check out cateringbyfriesen.com. From today through till April 9th, you can order your classic Easter dinner box from Catering by Friesen Brothers. It feeds for, get this, guys, feeds for just $99 plus GST. You could go buy all the ingredients, spend a few hours making it, and probably spend more than that. And it wouldn't be prepared by a Red Seal chef like it will be with Catering by Friesen Brothers. This includes Easter favorites like roasted turkey, roasted baby potatoes, creamy dill carrots, and more. You can learn more at cateringbyfriesen.com. They have a vegan option as well, which I highly recommend. Again, that's cateringbyfriesen.com. And our friends at North Road Investment Council with a call out to business owners out there. If you own or operate a business, in particular, if you're asking big financial questions like, whether or not you should pay yourself in dividends or salary, put savings into a TFSA or an RRSP, or leave money in the corporation for eventual retirement. These are questions that the team at North Road is helping clients answer every single day. If you're taking more than $200,000 home annually from your business, if you're over the age of 40, you should really consider the individual pension plan. It's a powerful retirement strategy, can provide higher tax-deferred savings over RRSPs, but it's not for everybody. So the team at North Road's put together a white paper on their website. Clear, plain language, easy to understand. It outlines the pros and cons of that IPP. You can learn if it's right for you, and I would say more importantly, schedule a sit-down with Marshall, Carey, a team member at North Road Investment Council. You can connect with them online at northroadic.com. Mark Dorin, our guest in the spotlight today in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. It was good to see you, and I love how you, by the way, you're referring to people, regulars in our live chat, by their chat handles, and they're referring to you as well, like everybody knows each other, which, by the way, warms my heart. But I know that you were watching our interview with W. Brett Wilson yesterday. That was the 17th of March for people that want to check it out. I want to play a clip from that in a moment, get your take on what he put in front of the audience. But general takeaways, what did you think?
Well, two takeaways I had, really. The one about coal mining, the one thing that I think, we alluded to this, I think, the last time I was here, but it's been quite some time, is that the part about coal mining that doesn't get spoken about much is the de facto expropriation portion, or it's called compulsory taking. So in my opinion, the government messed up this policy. They had to back out of it because they were going to get the compulsory taking compensation was going to be so high, but I don't think they've really been honest with the people of Alberta about it. And so I think that you could use some airing. And in terms of the orphan well things we talked about yesterday, when a company goes bankrupt, their wells either get sold, and if they're not sold, those wells go to the care and custody of the Orphan Well Association, and the Orphan Fund, which I spoke of, which is supposed to be funded by industry, is supposed to close those wells and close them. So Mr. Wilson said, name a well that hasn't been closed or abandoned. I think he meant those terms. So of course they were, by the Orphan Well Association with the rest of the industry's money, probably after it sat for, maybe not abandoned yet, who knows, might have sat for 10 or 20 years before the site was all cleaned up.
Johnny, I'll play this short from my laptop here. Let everybody know and remind you, If you want to join 37,000 or so of the smartest people in Canada, you can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. That's where you'll find highlights. It's where you'll find our YouTube shorts. And that includes this one, a moment, kind of an elevated tension, I guess, during that interview when an audience member, Ken K, through our super chat, put a question in front of Brett about orphan wells and those rumblings that he had left Alberta taxpayers on the hook. And here's how it played out. Do you think that a big part of this, of the pushback on coal mining, whether it's open pit or underground in Alberta, has to do with the fact that many Albertans have lost faith in the Alberta Energy Regulator or in accountability for energy or resource companies to clean up their environmental liabilities? Would you acknowledge that's a thing?
It varies widely. Look at what's going on in terms of Fort McMurray and the land that's being developed there. There's people, the radical environmentalists thought that exploiting the oil sands was going to destroy the planet. That's simply not the case. Has there been a lot of issues with unabandoned wells and the delays and the dawdling on getting that stuff all cleaned up? For sure there has. And that's a regulatory issue. But again, Rachel Notley was in power while it was a mess as well.
Ken K, $20 into our super chat, wants me to ask you, if Mr. Wilson wants anyone to believe that he cares about the environmental repercussions, will he prove himself by cleaning up his own orphan wells?
Name one well. There isn't a single well that I'm associated with that hasn't been organized and cleaned up. I've been invested in dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of unique oil and gas companies, and the green groups, or call it the extreme left, that come out and refer to Brett having orphan wells. Utter bullshit. There isn't a single well.
You chaired a company, Forent Energy, that went bankrupt and left orphan wells behind, correct? Fact?
They all went with the land when the banks took back. So no, there's nothing that, I'm sorry, what are you looking at me like that
well,
for?
Because, Brett,
they're not
it's
my
like,
wells.
This is because
I funded everything.
It's in the news today that rural municipalities are essentially being told that while the Alberta Energy Regulator endeavors to do things better, like you're talking about, the $250 million that they're owed in back taxes and property taxes, they can essentially kiss those goodbye. And that's essentially been what's happening in Alberta, is that insolvent companies are being sold for $1 and landowners are being left in a lurch with these wells that aren't cleaned up, let alone the unpaid property taxes. You can't tell me that's not a thing. You can't tell me that's not a story.
That's a big picture. Absolutely, it's an issue. What I said to you was very specifically, name one well that I'm still responsible for that hasn't been managed in the process. Name one well.
You sold the company and then the wells moved with the sale and then they didn't get cleaned up, so it's not your problem? Is that it?
Every time you sell a property, there are half finished. And again, they were not abandoned wells. They were suspended wells. And they go along because people redevelop suspended wells.
So are you suggesting that people shouldn't be concerned about that? It's a real thing,
He
man.
should be. But if he's going to be, he should be smart. And right now he's coming across as stupid.
All right, that was Brett Wilson on the show. You're chuckling. We got a ton of feedback. The flamethrower coming up this Friday, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, is almost going to be exclusively, by the end, if we keep getting emails at this pace, it'll just be about that interview. A lot of feedback. I actually really enjoyed it. I understand why he rubbed some people the wrong way with his approach, but I like the spirited conversations. And I like getting to the heart of the matter, right? Like Ken K nailed it. I mean, that's probably the best $20 that Ken's ever spent, let alone I do also see him dropping another 10 in here. I think he wants to buy you a couple cold beers.
We love Ken.
He says keep up the good fight. But that was an effective $20 investment on behalf of Ken. Got under Brett's skin a little bit, but it also, what I appreciate is it gave Brett an opportunity in an objective forum to speak at length without limitation and to address those rumors. Generally speaking, how does it strike you?
Weasel words. What did he really say? I mean, not one well I'm still responsible for. Well, that could very well mean that his wells went to the Orphan Well Association. We don't know. It's hard to comment on what he specifically meant. But I will say one thing. He doesn't have that many wells compared to other people. Susan Riddell Rose, now there's somebody that dumped thousands and thousands of wells on the rest of the industry, or potentially in the future on the taxpayer. And she got a great award for it.
That's Rubelite Energy?
No, that's she's the daughter of the Paramount Energy family, and she's the one that sold her wells to Sequoia. Sequoia took on about 4,500 wells or so, and 18 months later went bankrupt. And then the trustee actually sued her, and she ponied up a bit more money, but nothing compared to what it's going to cost to retire all those wells.
Huh. So what are people supposed to take away from this, like the average person? Like, if you're a landowner, I understand why you're choked. If your parent or you yourself has faced a tough health diagnosis and you hear from a neurologist that it's as a result of either insufficient monitoring or even just bad faith action in industry, then I can understand why that person would be very, very upset. For the average Albertan, this may be and probably is flying under the radar. And so long as real issues are flying under the radar, they're not going to be a top priority for politicians. You and I both know that.
Yeah. Well, I can sum it up pretty succinctly and in terms of what our solutions are. And I can say that we have really good oil and gas laws in Alberta. Are they perfect? No. Could we tweak them here and there? Yes. We have an enforcement problem primarily. And, most of our problems can be boiled down to 3 words: Alberta Energy Regulator. We don't have one. We don't have an effective regulator. Brian Jean said after my press conference last week, he said, well, we have the best regulator in the world. If that's true, then there's no regulation in the world. So, we've got these great laws, but laws that aren't enforced are meaningless. But we have the best concept in the world. This orphan fund is the best concept, and we can do the same thing with municipal taxes. What we need is levies on industry to cover these things that are going to the taxpayer. It's as simple as that. But we've got to make sure that the person in charge of charging those levies, which is now the Alberta Energy Regulator, does it according to law. The other thing we can do is we can go backwards on oil companies and on directors, etc. We can go back up the chain to the companies that had the money that dumped these liabilities on smaller companies. Now, the whole industry is supposed to pick it up as a total, but if the energy regulator doesn't properly assess the levy and the stuff just sits on the landscape and we have to pay the landowners, etc., then the polluter pay principle has holes in it. So if we plug the polluter pay holes, we won't have a problem here. Industry can afford to clean this up. They're supposed to clean it up by law. It's not unfair to make them do what they agreed to do and what they're required to do by law. It's just a matter of enforcement, and it's a matter of replacing the management in this regulator to get people that can actually enforce laws instead of looking the other way.
I know you're not going to be surprised by this, but our live chat is like banging right now. And we rarely, typically what I would do at this point is thank the guest for coming. And then we would take a quick break, and then we'd come back and we get into the live chat for like 20 minutes or so. But it might be kind of cool if you want, especially considering like you've put in your time, buddy. You've earned your stripes in our chat as a longtime friend contributor to the show. You want to hang out with me and we'll read through the live chat?
I'm here as long as you want me here.
You want to do that? Like,
absolutely.
We don't do that all the time. This audience knows, but I think it might be kind of cool because a lot of these people actually have questions.
No problem.
I'm not the one to answer them.
No problem. And by the way, I've probably seen every show you've ever done.
Are you
and
serious?
I'm almost always in the chat. I just may not comment.
My man, I sure appreciate that. We hear from people that tell us that they've listened or watched every single show. And I honestly, Johnny, the cockles of our hearts are warmed when we hear this, isn't it? I mean, like, we make an honest effort every single day to talk about things that matter to people with credible guests, with perspectives that we can stand behind. Sometimes it rubs people the wrong way. I understand that, but to know that you've been here for every single show, it gives you the background, the credibility, and obviously you're seeing respect from audience members here as well. We're talking to Mark Dorin in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. It is a Wednesday. While we're talking about the value of nature, while we're talking about what we're protecting here, what better time to celebrate the crown jewel of Canada's national parks in Jasper National Park. We do it once a week, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper. It's MyJasper Memories. And I'm going to be honest with you this week. I'm about to talk to you about a place that I've always wanted to go to, but I've never been. I have no personal experience at this lodge, but after taking a look at their website and after looking at these photos, you better believe that my hiking pals and I are going to be on our way to Shovel Pass Lodge this summer. This backcountry lodge is now open for booking for the summer. I'm realizing that I probably should have booked my trip before I told you guys about it because they're about to get flooded with, I'm sure, registration at shovelpasslodge.com. One of the many charms that make up this backcountry lodge, one of the many, is its location. It is situated in the middle of the famous Skyline Trail, and it's accessible primarily by a doable, it's not a joke, but it's a very doable 21-kilometer hike, about 13 miles. And it's a very unique collection of cabins that reward those who make the journey to get there. It's an iconic trek. If you just Google Skyline Trail, or even better yet, go on YouTube and search Skyline Trail. It passes remote lakes, panoramic ridges, and incomparable alpine meadows. If you time out your journey correctly, you're going to see wildflowers that will blow your mind, maybe the colors of fall, depending on what your schedule looks like. All of this before you arrive at Shovel Pass Lodge. And then when you roll in, they're going to have coffee and treats ready for you, the lucky guests staying there. Now, hikers need only bring a day pack. This is one of the really great benefits of this. The lodge provides warm bedding and hearty home-cooked meals that are served family style in their main building. So you don't have to lug in like 45, or if you're like my buddy Bins, 95 pounds of gear. It's the only lodge of its kind in the national park, period. It offers stunning mountain scenery, friendly hospitality, and rugged comfort in a place that most people obviously are sleeping in a tent to see along that Skyline Trail. You can stay multiple nights, which is my personal recommendation, just based on what I'm seeing here in front of me. That's going to be our plan this summer. I guarantee it. Because you want to fully explore the region before hiking back to the trailhead. And that's another one of the benefits of staying at the Shovel Pass Lodge. You can do these, scrambles, we might call them, these day hikes. Go explore with basically your camelback. You'll carry your water, a couple of snacks during the day. Maybe for those of you photographers, a couple long lenses, wide angle. Go get the photos that will just blow everybody away, right? And then when you're ready, when you've wrapped up your visit to Shovel Pass Lodge, you head back to the trailhead, back into civilization to share details of your journey. You can check out shovelpasslodge.com. I'll show you right now on my screen. You can book now. As mentioned, it is open, officially registration, that is. The lodge itself will open on the 1st of July. What a way to celebrate Canada Day. How cool would that be? 7 cabins in total. They can host 19 people at once. So if you have a big group, maybe one of those annual hiking traditions, you're going to want to make sure you book your dates ASAP. And again, they've got everything you're going to need. If you're hiking really, late season, propane heaters right there, wash basin, lighting, you guys. I love the ingredients they're bringing in, horseback and helicopter. I mean, they are doing it right. This is a family-owned business. You can learn more about it, again, at shovelpasslodge.com. You have till September 15th until they'll close for the season. You can read what guests are saying about their experience. A lot of them are talking about the scenery, of course. A lot of them are talking about the experience, but most of them are talking about the folks that own and operate this place. They're talking about the family behind Shovel Pass Lodge. I can't wait to get out there. Maybe I'll see some of you out there this summer, Real Talkers. Oh, the time we will have 21 kilometers into the backcountry at Shovel Pass Lodge. MyJasper Memories is proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. You can always check out their website, jasper.travel, for more on your next visit to Jasper National Park. Mark, we have one vote for you here in our live chat, powered by Park Power, from Heidi, who is nominating you as Alberta's next premier. Have you ever, I wish you could see our podcast listeners see your face when you responded to that. Do you have any interest in going into politics? Do you think this would it almost be like it would disqualify you maybe from politics for how loudly you're speaking out against this? Do you think? I don't know if the political process has the appetite for somebody that is as much of a no BS person as you are.
Yeah, I'm not a political animal, I don't think. Let's be clear that I only do this activism for one reason. My clients have real problems. These landowners have serious, serious problems, and I can't get this regulator to act. That's why I do this advocacy. It's a serious matter. So that's why I do this. I never wanted to be, going on talk shows or doing press conferences, etc. That's not my nature. But you do what you have to do.
Does it make you a little uncomfortable?
I'm getting pretty used to it now, but I had stage fright worse than you could ever imagine. My first interview when I came on here on Zoom, I mean, I was almost petrified the first time I came on here. So, but do you remember, I want to go into something. Do you remember our first exchange in the chat where
I'm not sure.
it was Don Iveson was on?
Okay. Like episode 1?
No, but he was on, and I said in the chat, ask him about if there's employment in closing out inactive, and he said, yeah, there's great employment, and this is what actually started it. So, but that's what I wanted to talk about, is that if we make the polluter pay, we can have this prosperity boom across the province in businesses, hotels, restaurants, car dealerships, you name it. At the pace we're cleaning up now, it'll take over 100 years to clean up these sites. If we bring that forward to 20 years, it's the same cement trucks that plugged the well that drilled it in the first place. It's the same cats and backhoes that built the sites that take them out after they're done. We can have incredible prosperity in virtually every corner of the province if we make the polluter pay, and we have the laws to do it. We can stop the gas venting. We can start all that tomorrow. We have the laws in place. We're just being, this industry's running the show here, and they're broke. We don't want to let a broke industry run the province. That's stupid.
Ms. B in our live chat says, I'm glad to see people like Mark insisting on accountability. It goes on to say the Alberta Energy Regulator seems a lot more like a front. It's just to give the appearance of a regulatory body, but it's actually not at all one. Brett shared with us yesterday, Brett Wilson, that he had, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he basically said that he's optimistic that under new leadership, this new CEO, Rob Morgan, that the AER can find its way. That's my paraphrase. Are you confident that that could be the case, that under new management could mean different results for Albertans that are looking to see the regulator sink its teeth in a little bit more?
Sadly, I would have to say no. Mr. Morgan's been there for long enough now he's done some really controversial things. The main thing he did is he did what's called a reconsideration, which he has no jurisdictional authority to do, in my humble view. Professors of law agree with me. He stopped a coal hearing in its tracks. Hearing commissioners are supposed to operate independently of the other employees at the AR. Now, people don't hear about hearing commissioners much because the AR hardly ever has hearings. They process 40,000 applications a year, and they've only done a handful of hearings in their entire history. It's pathetic. So that's one thing. But recently there's been news stories that Mr. Morgan was talking to company executives that had ongoing hearings, rare hearings, mind you, but ongoing hearings. That's unacceptable. It's like talking to the judge in the back room of a court. These are quasi-judicial proceedings, and they need to be treated as such. So we have this regulator. It's an administrator, a police force, a court, etc., all wrapped into one, and they have to keep these functions separate, and they have no idea.
Emma Graney, who's an energy reporter for the Globe and Mail, for subscribers, you can check it out at theglobeandmail.com. Just a few days ago, this story was published the 13th of March. We're talking on the 18th, about a week ago-ish. It was updated on the 14th of March. The headline, internal emails highlight Alberta Energy Regulator leadership concerns on coal files. She goes on to dig into, I believe this was a FOIP request by the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation that was shared with the Globe and Mail. But internal emails between hearing commissioners, like you're talking about, the AER, these are internal emails, detail concerns that the conduct of Mr. Morgan, chief executive, on two separate occasions could undermine the authority and the autonomy of their work. The emails between Mr. Morgan, a coal mining company, and the Alberta Energy Minister's office, that's Brian Jean, about a mine application had raised questions about the independence of the regulator. And as Graney reports, the latest documents show worries within the agency itself. Doesn't exactly instill confidence. It's almost comical.
Yeah, except for this is the biggest regulator in the country. And let me be the first to, I always say this. The Alberta Energy Regulator has this incredibly broad, difficult mandate to perform. They are bound. Errors are expected. That's why there's so many review provisions in their statutes. And the way they're supposed to approach it is, if they had to have a hearing for every 40,000 license applications, we'd never get any wells drilled or pipelines built. So what they're supposed to do is review decisions that might be flawed. But they don't do that either. So a good regulator, a world-class regulator like Mr. Brian Jean talks about, they welcome reviews because it makes them better. But when a regulator is allowed to make decisions with no checks and balance and no reviews, they just get worse. And that's our regulator in Alberta. It doesn't please me to say this, Brian. It pains me to say it, but it is the honest to God truth. If we don't fix this regulator, if we don't clean out the top management of this regulator that are just yes men and women, we won't have a future in this province. It's the most important issue in this province.
Jump in when you want to make a comment. I'll rattle off a few here. Audience is on fire today. Happy Canadian in our live chat, powered by Park Power. Get exclusive discounts, by the way, Real Talkers. Internet, electricity, natural gas by visiting parkpower.ca/Real Talk. Happy Canadian says it seems like oil and gas companies go in, make a shit ton of cash, and bolt. Says, I loved how Brett Wilson, I hate doing it, Chili. I'll read it. It says, was such a dick that he kept saying, tell me what wells. Tell me what wells. I didn't know what wells. Do you know what wells?
No,
I don't know
words.
what wells.
Weasel words.
I said, buddy, I'm just reading a question from Ken K. I'm just reading the question.
Yep.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Yep.
Jillian says rural folks need to take that energy that they have for Justin Trudeau and put it into this. Like, where are the fuck the Alberta Energy Regulator flags? Where are the weekly op-eds about this in the National Post? I'm laughing, but she's not wrong. Dubious says, oh, the UCP-controlled oil regulator isn't anything but an excuse to pay their buddies a wage. Imagine that. That from Dubious. I mean, there's a lot of comments kind of along those same lines. Alberta Rancher says we had a ton of issues and made complaints to the regulator with zero action. Alberta Rancher says, so I started making OH&S complaints, occupational health and safety, and they shut things down more than once. Jill says, can't pay because you're not profitable. Does that work for all businesses or just oil? Like, can I open a bakery and just not pay rent or taxes if I'm not making money? Dwayne's wondering, what do farmers do about these useless or unproductive wells on their farms if they want to sell their land? You're nodding your head. That's obviously a big issue.
It's a real big issue. And so I represent a lot of urban landowners. We have lots of them in the province, and I want to point that out. But we urban landowners have known for a long time that if there's a well on your land, the bank's going to say, hey, your land's essentially worthless. And if you get a reclamation certificate, the banks finance these companies. They know how bogus the reclamation certificates are. They make you get your own environmental assessment, even though the government has guaranteed that land's been cleaned up to its standards. So that's how bad it is out there. But it is spreading, so people are going to have trouble selling their land for full market value because of lack of regulation. They're going to have trouble getting mortgages. People are going to have trouble retiring. This problem is going to balloon, and it's already starting to happen. So we did a W5 show a few years ago about devaluation of land. It's called Dirty Legacy. It's pinned on my Twitter page if anybody wants to watch it.
Okay. Yeah, W5, no big deal. Hey, buddy. Interesting comment here from Plain Power. I recognize this is a supercharged comment, all things considered, but I'll put it on the record. Plain Power says, who would have thought that Wiebo Ludwig was a hero before his time? Obviously, Wiebo Ludwig, a polarizing personality, was implicated. I'll be careful. Legally, I don't have the proper small print in front of me to characterize it, but people can Google his alleged involvement. I don't remember where that case wound up. I'll Google it as you're talking. But with the death of a teenage girl who was shot while joyriding on his property, Ludwig was suspected to be behind the bombings or attempted, do we say acts of domestic terrorism, citizen action? What would people call it? I'll let you give your take on it. But he was seen as a renegade, as obviously somebody that was very critical of oil and gas, but he believed very strongly I actually had a chance to interview him once. He believed very strongly that oil and gas activity on or near his property was responsible for health impacts on his family, including a disproportionate number of miscarriages and the like. What do you remember about Wiebo Ludwig? And what do you make of the comment from Plain Power, a hero before his time? I recognize it's a controversial thing to say, but what do you think?
I'm glad he asked that. So I'm going to answer it in 2 or 3 different ways. First of all, if you have watched my news conference from last week, you'll notice that the pumping unit behind us is still operating. They're operating now as we speak. I did not shut in those wells because only the operator or the licensee of the well or someone designated by the regulator, which doesn't include me, is entitled to touch someone else's well or facility. They're operating illegally as we speak in this city. I did not shut those down because I don't want to be arrested like Mr. Wiebo Ludwig was. Now, I also want to say that I was in court a few years ago supporting someone, and we were in court for 5 days, and his son happened to be in the courthouse at the same time. So I met his son an hour a day for 5 days in a row, and we discussed it. And their story is very different. They tell stories of, for example, they fracked the well and the sand is producing back, and it ate out a hole in the elbow on the wellhead, and it was spewing sour gas, and they're supposed to stay and watch it, but nobody stayed, and so it was spewing sour gas. And they have their own stories about how these releases occurred. I don't know whose story is truthful. I know it was like a Mr. Big type sting thing, and so I don't trust those. But there are people out there with real problems, and I'm one of them. They push you until you lose your temper or until you make some sort of I can't count the people I say. I just had a landowner call me yesterday that says, oh, the oil company says I was violent to their personnel. This is one of their biggest tricks. They say that the landowner's violent, and when they're not, and the regulator will push you to your limit, and then they will, put a black mark on your forehead. You're a terrorist or something, simply because you lost your patience. And most people would lose their patience when their livestock are dying, their children are sick, they're not safe in their own home, etc. So let's make one thing really, really clear here. The security of the person is guaranteed under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That means landowner safety, and they're only leasing a small portion of your property. They're supposed to keep their harmful gases on site or take a bigger site, and this is not happening. Most of the sites in Alberta are too small.
The emissions are supposed to stay within like the square of where the.
If it comes off site, it better not be harmful anymore. Take a bigger site.
Okay.
Most of the sites in Alberta
when does that ever happen?
Well, most of the sites in Alberta are too small because it costs money to lease a big site. It's all boils down to dollars and cents.
I just want to fact check a couple of things here. People can always just Google Wiebo Ludwig and read up on it. I'm just referencing the Wikipedia page here for just so you know what my source is here. And it talks about hundreds of acts of vandalism in the 1990s against natural gas sites, many against AEC West, which was the main company operating near Trickle Creek, which is where the commune was, where the Ludwig family and others lived, a religious community.
That was a provincial government company.
Oh, is that right?
They operated here too in Edmonton.
AEC West was provincially owned?
Yeah, and it got sold, amalgamated within to make in Canada.
Okay. In 98, the RCMP did charge Ludwig for an attack on a Suncor well that occurred days after one of his grandchildren was delivered stillborn. He was convicted and sentenced to 28 months in jail in 2000, convicted of 5 offenses, including blowing up a well, vandalizing another by pouring concrete into it, and counseling an undercover police officer to buy dynamite. I want to honor the memory of Carmen Willis, say her name. In 1999, I believe she was 15 years old. She was a teenager anyway when this happened. Pickup truck full of her and her friends trespassing on the Trickle Creek farm. And an unidentified person shot at the truck. Ludwig was the one who called 911. The investigation suggested the bullet hit the bottom of the truck, ricocheted up, and hit the girl in the chest. A second teen was hit in the arm but survived. Police never identified the shooter and were not able to recover the weapon. No one was ever charged with the death. And according to this report, local residents still refer to that event as a mystery. Also worth noting, in February of 2018, charges laid against Ludwig and Richard Boonstra, a fellow commune member. The judge ultimately finding that they had counseled another to possess an explosive substance, attempted possession of fake dynamite, done mischief, destroying property, possessing an explosive substance, sentenced to 28 months in jail. And after being released from prison, Wiebo Ludwig largely faded from media attention. Here's something I didn't know. The Encana bombings, by the way, also interesting in 2008. People can read up on those. It would take me an hour to go through all this. I won't. But Wiebo Ludwig died after being diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And he was diagnosed in 2011. Used an alternative medicine regimen. This doesn't really matter. Really none of my business. But included injections of vitamin C and hydrogen peroxide. He died months later, April 9th of, that would have been 2012, right? In his log cabin, the 9th of April, 2012. How about this? His family, his last words, he requested his family not quarrel and that they keep their faith. He was buried almost immediately in an above-ground crypt in a forest near his home, a private funeral ceremony. The day after he died, RCMP officers asked his family if they could open his coffin to take his fingerprints. The RCMP said in order to verify his death. But the family refused, calling the request odd, invasive, and a terrible disrespect. RCMP said it's common for police to take fingerprints from a recently deceased person if they have a criminal record, but other experts, third-party experts outside the RCMP have disputed this claim. Wow. I was not fully up to speed. I mean, obviously, you know that sort of the story of Wiebo Ludwig. It seems like Albertans, I know our population in this province is growing greatly, and there may be many either new Canadians or people that moved here from Newfoundland or Ontario or wherever that haven't heard of Wiebo Ludwig. But I remember, in the 90s in high school, going to university, and then early in my journalism career, he was a personality. Like, he was someone that was prominent in news coverage. Working against oil and gas companies that he believed were operating in bad faith.
Oh, it was a big story at the time. In fact, I had a friend who had a son that was going through the courts for a murder charge at the same time as Wiebo Ludwig's case was on. Oh, wow. And we got basically no coverage of his murder trial. So, because Wiebo topped the news cycle. So...
We'll get back to our live chat here, powered by Park Power. Ms. Katie's wondering, whatever happened to the money that Trudeau's government gave Alberta for orphan well cleanup? It was like over $1 billion, says during or after the pandemic. Wasn't it $1.3 billion, if I remember correctly?
No, it was $1.4 billion total for all three prairie provinces.
Okay.
The maximum for Alberta was $1 billion. It was for inactive wells, not orphans, and the contractors had to apply for it. And so the government of Alberta managed the money. And so the contractors had to apply for it. The oil companies themselves couldn't apply for it, but they had to have an oil company on side. Most of it went to the big guys. And Encana and CNRL, Canadian Natural Resources, got the lion's share of it. The same guys that are paying into the orphan fund got more from that than they would have put out to the orphan fund. So to me, it just... So anyway, they did not spend it all. A portion of it went back. And the main portion, I think, that went back was They divvied the money up into different programs for different types of wells and different types of contracts, and there were some Indigenous contractors were supposed to take advantage of a certain portion of it, and I think don't quote me on it, but I believe that was the lion's share of the money that didn't get spent. So it went to inactive wells. It was to create jobs during COVID. Remember I said we could have a boom? Mm-hmm. If we did that times 10 every year, they did it to create jobs during COVID.
Are the feds doing more than the province in cleaning up Alberta?
No, that's the only money they've ever given. And in fact, it's probably contrary to Alberta law. I was with ALDP at the time. We begged them not to give that money.
What's ALDP? We begged them,
Alberta Liabilities Disclosure Project. We're the ones that estimated the size of these liabilities, if that's possible. And so we begged them not to give that money, but to lend that money. And the federal government didn't pay any attention to it.
Joe says, look at the rate of cancer and other afflictions near Sherwood Park, referencing Refinery Row. Says higher than averages. I wonder why. Matthew says we should really call natural gas methane gas. That's what it is. Natural is just a branding thing, originally to differentiate it from coal, which is true. Goes on to say natural makes it sound cleaner than it is. Nia says we see dead birds around orphaned wells often, and sick cows as well. Do you see that? Do the landowners you work with report that?
Sure, lots. And goats, for some reason, I've run into quite a few people who had goats, and goats seem to abort when they're near well sites. I've seen that a lot. But by the way, methane is just one component of what we call natural gas. The correct term is hydrocarbon gases, and there's different. So we have methane, ethane, propane, butanes, etc. And so methane's just the main the lightest molecule, the lightest component. So to call it methane's not proper either.
DW says, older voter here. Ralph Klein was also the environment minister in Don Getty's cabinet. I remember that. Ralph Klein was my mayor growing up. I remember, TV reporter, mayor. I remember him becoming environment minister, seeking the leadership of the PCs, becoming premier. It was a wild journey for Calgary kids to watch.
He brought in the current law we have called the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act, which is the law that the AR now administers, where we get reclamation certificates for the well sites that make them clean up spills, etc. One of the problems with oil and gas laws is that we do a law for environment instead of just oil and gas well sites. So you have to pick and choose these aspects of oil and gas law out of other laws, and it causes a lot of confusion. And we have a lot of different government organizations that administer these laws. They constantly switch it around. Who's going to be in charge of these laws? And it just creates a moving target and lots of confusion out there.
Kathy says, it's wild to me that expecting companies to actually be responsible for the mess they're making is an unreasonable expectation. It is so frustrating. Kathy, I'm with you. It really does blow my mind. And I know that I've seen you get piled on. I've seen you be characterized as a left-wing lunatic or an anti-oil and gas type. You're the burr under the saddle, which is why we opened this conversation the way we did, establishing your career, establishing what you've done, and establishing your why. Any interviewer's got to find out the why, and I appreciate you sharing that. But I echo what Kathy says.
I will say that in the last week, we had a lot of media attention since we did this press report, and almost no negative comments whatsoever. One or two negative comments on social media, but a flood of positive comments. But I will say this, because we talked about Wiebo, and I forgot to say, I had a lot of landowners contact me and said, I shut that well down and I got my money. See, they should be careful doing that. They might cause a spill or an explosion, and they might also stop themselves from getting paid by the government.
You're talking about people going rogue, going renegade. When they say shut down the well, you're talking about they vandalized it or they...
I'm a rule of law guy. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just because the regulator and the industry and the government are acting illegally, that doesn't justify us to act illegally as landowners. I've always been that way. But I will say that landowners are fed up. They've had it, and they will start, in my opinion, taking matters into their own hands more and more as time goes on, just out of sheer frustration. And I think we should change things and reform this regulator before it degrades to that.
Tracy says profits over people continues to be the case, but as health issues rise, many more people will be concerned. And I think that that's a wonderful point. It's an important point. I mean, it's a gut punch point, right? Like, it's going to take what? More degenerative sort of, neurological conditions. It's going to take more cancers till people wake up and start caring more about this. I guess this episode certainly could act as a call to action for some people, and I bet it will. Why don't we wrap by talking about responsibleenergyab.ca. Talk to us about CARE. This is a new consortium.
Yeah, well, it's a fairly new consortium. We're about a year old right now. It is a coalition of landowners. There are scientists. There are surface rights advocates. We've got Indigenous groups, we've got environmental groups, we've got human health groups and other civil society groups, and we all agree on one thing that brought us together, and that is we need to reform the Alberta Energy Regulator. So we've been having 2 or 3 campaigns. We had town halls all over Alberta last year about the mature asset strategy. We're going to have some more. We're planning one in Provost coming up in the next few weeks. Watch the website. There'll be another one in Calgary. I hope we're going to have one in Medicine Hat. Not too sure. I'm not the main person planning those. I did go to all but one, and I usually handle the question and answer period because we get a lot of landowners with questions. So that was our one campaign. We also have the Clean Up Your Mess campaign, which involved the real tax thing we talked about, and they helped me do my my press conference last week.
Okay, so I'm showing that one now. That's cleanupyourmess.ca, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll put both of these in the show notes. If people are like me, if I'm listening on a podcast, I can never remember. So we'll put it all in the show notes, and people can check it out there.
The other thing we did is we challenged the orphan well levy decision that the Alberta Energy Regulator makes each year. They're making it illegally. We asked them to review it and do it legally. They dismissed that challenge. I think we'll end up in court over that. It's the single most important thing in Alberta law to protect citizens from the sins of the oil industry, and we just have to do the orphan well fund properly.
Real talkers won't stop asking wonderful questions. Let's rapid fire these ones so we can get you on the road. I know you got to get to Redwater, right? Is that where you're headed?
Hey, I'm all yours till
All right. Well,
there's
we
nothing more
appreciate it.
important than getting this message out.
I appreciate that. Neola's tuned into our live stream presented by California Closets. She wonders, or she comments, she says, a regulator is only as good as the power it's given. And if it's given no power or independence, it really can't do anything. Fair point?
This regulator has tons of powers.
Okay.
It chooses, it has, these are often what you call discretionary powers, where the law says that the regulator may do something, but there's other powers that are mandatory where they must do something. So if it says may, you haven't got a hope that they will do it. And this is a problem for municipalities because they want the Alberta Energy Regulator to handle these new tax strategies. And unless they word those new laws and rules with teeth in them, the regulator will do what it'll manage taxes like it manages public safety, which is not at all.
Marie says, my hubby worked in environment, health, and safety for a big and small oil and gas companies, tried to do the best reclamation of well sites that he could, but was often rejected by upper management due to cost. Alberta Girl says, landowners need more guys like Mark. The legal system is not on our side. Tony says, I feel for landowners, but honestly, they're the same people that keep voting against their own interests. Everybody telling them that UCP with Danielle Smith would be bad maybe, but they still voted blue. That from Tony. I love this from Jillian, who says, I love Mark's emissions cap, but I fly way too much and I drive a truck. People will think I'm an idiot. That's an amazing comment. Thanks for doing this, Mark. I've just got the world of respect for you. You backed it up. When I saw you in the chat yesterday, during our conversation with Brett Wilson, we knew that we wanted to get you on the show, and I appreciate you delaying or diverting your trip to Redwater to come talk to us and spit the truth, man. People need to hear it.
Thanks for having me on. Every chance we can get, great. I suggest have a roundtable with some of these people on this topic. I can provide.
Are you daring me to, Mark?
No, I'm suggesting.
I like it. I like it. Maybe you can give me 3 solid names. Well, maybe
no
we'll get you in on it. But
Yep.
we've got, of course, that's a wonderful tradition here on the show. Love the exchange of ideas, but I wanted to go one-on-one with you today. Thanks for doing it. Again, cleanupyourmess.ca is the one site we want to draw your attention to. And then, of course, the other one that Mark's been talking to us about here is the Coalition for Responsible Energy at responsibleenergyab.ca. Real Talkers, before we wrap, in case you missed it, on our Friday episode, this was our most recent Friday episode, and so that, of course, would have been the 13th of March. We sat down with child psychologist Dr. Caroline Bazanko. Just a fascinating conversation on why kids today are more anxious and depressed, why they don't have the necessary coping mechanisms, they don't have the skills, really, to deal with adversity. They're not resilient, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I want to recommend you check out that episode if you're a parent, a grandparent, a teacher. We're getting a ton of feedback to it, and we want to invite your comments. You can either leave them on the YouTube episode, or you can send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Kids and screen time was a big part of that conversation, and we'd love to know what rules your family has in place. Dr. Bazanko is an associate professor of psychology at Athabasca University, and you can find more about the AU Advantage online at athabascau.ca. Hundreds of programs and courses, custom designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. It means that as we talk to you now in March, You don't have to wait till September to get started on your undergrad degree. Maybe your grad degree, an MBA. Maybe you've got a whole new world opening up in front of you with this dynamic job market, and you want to learn more about leveling up your post-secondary education. That starts with a visit today to athabascau.ca. I can't wait to see some of you tonight at the comic strip at West Edmonton Mall. It is the final night of UCAN Youth Services Comedy Night, and we're thrilled to have a table there of folks that are eager to support the work of UCAN Youth Services. We're so proud to support UCAN as our charity of choice for 2026. What they're doing in the lives of young people is remarkable. Check that. Rephrase. The doors that they're opening for young people and the young people that are changing their own destiny, that are altering their own path toward economic independence is truly inspiring. The team at UCAN is building hope right now. A brand new 16,000 square foot youth empowerment center. Needs a few renovations. They're leveling up their shop so they can put more young people into the trades, including road building and construction. If your family is considering its philanthropy goals, maybe you're doing some estate planning, we encourage you to consider UCAN Youth Services. Our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, always something going on, always benefits of membership, and that includes a couple of events I want to make sure are on your radar. Breakfast with NDP leader Naheed Nenshi, that coming up. This will be their response. The Chamber's doing it right. Last week, it was, of course, the luncheon with Alberta's Finance Minister, Nate Horner, UCP Finance Minister. Now a breakfast with NDP leader Naheed Nenshi coming up on the 2nd of April. You can get your tickets today. Edmonton Chamber members online at edmontonchamber.com. And of course, don't forget their Women in Business panel. It's a discussion, a networking event. That's coming up today at 2 o'clock. If you happen to be listening to this live, you still have time to register from 2 to 5 p.m. on the 18th of March. Success in today's workplace driven by collaboration, innovation, leaders who create space for others to thrive. It's a big priority for the Edmonton Chamber. You can read more about it and register last minute. They've still got a couple seats available at edmontonchamber.com. And before we wrap, you know that this month is a big one. It's Women's Health Research Month. I got to be honest, my mind was blown when I recognized some of the adversity that women have faced. The better word for it is that women have essentially been ignored when it comes to health research for decades. But disease affects women differently, specifically, disproportionately. Research hasn't reflected that reality. So this March, Women's Health Research Month, is an opportunity to change that. The Alberta Women's Health Foundation funds research that reflects women's realities, improving care and outcomes for women across our province. If you'd like to support women's health research, you can check out givetoawhf.org. That's givetoawhf.org, because when women's health advances, we all move forward. As we wrap the episode today and send Mark Dorin on his way, Mark, my grandpa Rudy, proud engineer at Chevron, would always say, safe journey. So we wish you well and thank you. Mark is one member of an incredible community that gathers daily in our live stream, participates in our live chat, and love to those of you as well that watch but maybe don't comment. We want to let you know how much it means to us to see that audience, that community grow. So thank you for telling your friends about Real Talk. Thanks for sharing this episode. Thanks for being a part of it all.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lauren Sterlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjaspersen.com.